Special guest. You've seen her on TV. You've seen her in the courtroom. You've seen her fighting for her client like no lawyer has fought for a client before. Her name is Sidney Powell, the lawyer for General Mike Flynn. Sidney, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much, John. It's always great to be with you.
Well, it's remarkable the work you've done over the last year to unravel so much of the Russia collusion narrative, specifically as it relates to General Flynn. But last week you dropped a bombshell in the courtroom. You actually asked Judge Emmett Sullivan, the guy that's been presiding over this whole case, to be dismissed, recused from the case because he's shown bias. Tell us a little bit about what led you to do that and what sort of things you've seen in recent weeks that amplify the fact that you thought he was a biased judge.
Well, it's been an ever-escalating series of events that have led me to the conclusion that he had to be disqualified under the applicable statutes. The last straw for me as a matter of law was when he actually filed his own petition for rehearing in the Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, when he was actively litigating against General Flynn on his own. The court had invited him originally to respond to our petition for writ of mandamus, seeking to make him dismiss the case, which is what the law requires. But then on his own, he set out to act as if he were a party in the case and got his lawyer to seek rehearing en banc as if he were a party. That's completely impermissible, unprecedented. The court should not have even considered it. It should have been dismissed outright. But instead, the Court of Appeals granted that en banc review, reversed the mandamus order of the original panel that had told him he must dismiss it, and created a whole new scenario pursuant to which he could have the hearing that he'd been wanting to have that was also unprecedented. He hired his amicus, his friend of the court, to oppose our dismissal out of the Washington Post from a vitriolic op-ed he wrote suggesting that the judge didn't have to follow the law at all. So it's been just a remarkable series of events. And then at the hearing itself, it got even worse. Well, first of all, he didn't act forthwith, which is what the Court of Appeals told him to do. He issued a scheduling order that was going to take until September 21 to even have us file a status report, and that would have been 3 weeks after the court's opinion when they told him to dismiss it forthwith.
It's extraordinary. And then you had some frustrations during that September 29th hearing with the way the judge treated you when you tried to make your first effort at a motion. Describe what that was like and how unusual that is for a judge not to allow a defense attorney to have their say.
Well, he was very abrupt and dismissive of anything I had to say. I was going, because of the number of things he said to begin with that were both false and tainted, I had to move to recuse him right there in the hearing. I didn't want it to go on. It should not have gone on. And he wouldn't even let me state the full basis for the motion. He said, you just have to file it, and that I should have filed it already. Well, there's no time frame per se on seeking recusal.
Right.
It's the Court of Appeals had already effectively said, he's not disqualified by virtue of having filed a petition for writ of mandamus, which is flat wrong. So I had to make a record of what had happened and seek recusal in the district court to preserve our right to seek his disqualification and have whatever he does reversed if he doesn't dismiss it with prejudice.
It's remarkable that this is still going on, given the extraordinary pieces of evidence that you've drawn out of the FBI and the Justice Department. I think all of them, and I haven't had a chance to talk to you since this came out, but the affidavit or the interview report of the FBI agent who worked this case was the lead on the Flynn case, tried to close it down in November, tried to close it down in January 17, November 16, and kept getting overruled by the higher-ups at the FBI. As you look back now, we've had a couple weeks to digest that extraordinary document. How troubling is it to you, and what does it say about the state of the FBI, at least at the end of the Comey era?
Oh, my goodness, John. There needs to be a massive sea change in the whole attitude and all the processes of the FBI. They have just gone off the rails at every level. Well, I would have felt a lot better if this agent had spoken up 4 years ago. I'm certainly glad he spoke up now when asked, but what we have all been through, what the country's been through for the last at least 3 years with the Mueller investigation and all of that mess should never have happened. And I know Sean Hannity always says, well, 99% are good. No, the corruption and the whole mental attitude about their jobs, their hubris, their lack of integrity extends far deeper than 1%. It has to be almost pervasive for no one to have spoken up and just screamed out about everything that was going wrong in this investigation. There were a lot of people involved. There were at least 40 agents that transferred from the Hillary Clinton email investigation to the Russia hoax, and they all knew it was a hoax.
Yeah, no, it's a remarkable wall of silence that occurred for 2-3 years, and it's only now, and we've had a hard time even with the current director who wasn't even there when this started, but Christopher Wray, it appears that you've had a hard time getting the remaining evidence. What is still outstanding? What documents do you think you still need to see in order for you to have a complete picture about what happened? Obviously, you've got a strong enough picture to make your argument for dismissal, but what other documents do you think still need to be declassified, released, so that the American public and your client can get a complete 360 view of what the FBI did to him?
Well, we still don't have the original FBI 302 report of the interview or the next draft after that.
Unbelievable.
Nor do we know how many drafts there were following that until we got the ones that we got that show material changes made, especially after they showed it to Vice President Pence and convinced him that Flynn had lied to him, which wasn't true at all. And we have never gotten his briefings to the DIA. We know that he briefed the DIA, and the FBI had access to those briefings about all his foreign contacts with Russia and with Turkey. And there was nothing nefarious going on at all. They knew all that. So there's still a lot of information out there, and no telling what else we don't know.
It's almost numbingly remarkable that the document in which they built the entire case against Michael Flynn, alleging that he lied to investigators, that the original FBI report, the very thing that should be the principal evidence of guilt or innocence, is still not in the public domain and not even in your hands as a defense lawyer. How can that be, given that the FBI has all these backup systems and computer systems? Is Chris Wray just keeping a game of keep away?
Either that or John Durham has it because somebody should be prosecuted for falsifying it.
Right. But that doesn't prevent...
But it has to be there. Yeah. Right. It has to be there, or the trail of its destruction has to be in the system.
Right. Yeah, that's such an important
point. Because people have referenced the agent coming back and writing his report that very night.
Right. In fact, there were text messages where Lisa Page and Peter Strzok were talking about editing it too, if I remember correctly, right? They were doing edits on it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And the only version you have is what from 8 months later or 7 months later, right in August? Is that correct? The version?
No, I have versions as early as I think it's February 10th.
Okay.
Maybe one before that.
Okay, but 13, 14 days after the interview.
Right.
Wow.
The ones where they made major changes.
Unbelievable. It's just unreal. And nowhere to go. So what happens now? You're waiting for the judge to rule on your two things, his motion to dismiss him from the case, and then your motion to dismiss the case, which has been joined by the Justice Department. How does this play out over the next few weeks based on what you know?
Well, the government filed its own motion to dismiss that was over 100 pages, and then they've, of course, supplemented that with probably another 80 pages of material they've given us. And just after I filed the motion to disqualify the judge, they pointed out how serious those issues are, but suggested that he moot them by granting the motion to dismiss with prejudice.
Right.
That would certainly be the best way to proceed, so we'll just have to see what he does.
Now, if there's any reason to be optimistic from your side, it's that his lawyer, during the appellate court hearings, kept saying there's no reason to think that the judge won't do what the law requires him to do, which is to dismiss this. So do you have any confidence he'll dismiss it, or have you given up hope that he's going to dismiss it? His lawyer certainly held out the possibility with the appellate court that that's where he was headed. Do you buy that argument?
Oh, yes. Well, she said a lot of things that turned out not to be true, including how limited his inquiry would be. And He definitely went far beyond the face of the government's motion, which he should not have done.
Yeah, great point.
But we did our best to answer his questions, no matter how inappropriate they were. So hopefully he will do the right thing. But do I have any confidence in that? No. And, he needs to do it quickly. And I'm sure he's going to use the motion to recuse as a basis to say it's going to take longer, but there's no reason either motion should take long. He's had since May 7th on the dismissal motion to figure it out. It was obvious he was very uninformed about a lot of the actual evidence that the government had produced at the hearing. That was another shocking revelation, how little he knew about everything we'd filed or even the motions that were pending before him.
What do you?
I don't know what to say.
Yeah, this is a judge that in your book from a decade ago was a hero in some respects because of his efforts to root out the bad prosecutions that occurred in his courtroom. What do you think has changed? I mean, why do you think he has opposed? When it's almost unheard of that the Justice Department and the defendant come together and agree on something and the judge won't accept it. What do you think is driving him? Do you have any theories? Anything he said or done that makes you wonder what's his motive for dragging it out the way it has been dragged out?
Well, there's only one really big difference between the situation in the Ted Stevens case that I bragged about him for 6 years about in License to Lie and this case, and that is the name of the Attorney General that requested the dismissal. In the Stevens case, he even said on the record the other day that Eric had asked him to dismiss that case.
On a first name basis with the Attorney General, huh?
Obviously.
Wow, that's telling. And maybe not has he referred to Attorney General Barr at any point, and how does he refer to him?
Not favorably.
Yeah, there's no doubt that there's a... So in your mind, it really comes down to political bias. Is that how you see it?
I think that's a reasonable conclusion that can be drawn from the comments and the evidence and the tenor and everything at the hearing. I would encourage people to go to my website, SidneyPowell.com, and read the motion to disqualify themselves. All the motions and exhibits are posted there.
Yeah, it's a great motion. I read it, and we, of course, had it up on justthenews.com right after it happened, but it is worth reading. And also, you've got some of the other important documents up there that really show the nature of this fraud that was perpetrated in the American justice system. When you look out now, there's not going to be any indictments. It doesn't appear by Durham before the election. We're not going to get a report. We might get some more declassifications 3 weeks from Election Day today, actually. What do you think is the most important thing the American public should know that you don't think they know yet?
That it's absolutely imperative we give Donald Trump a second term so he can do the work he wasn't able to do in the first term because of all the hoaxes thrown at him. It's absolutely imperative. The only hope we have for the rule of law surviving and this country surviving is to reelect him.
Well, that's a pretty powerful message. And Sidney, I know you've got to run. I want to thank you so much for all you've done and for joining us on the show again. And let's keep in touch because I assume there's going to be some big developments in this case in the not so distant future. Thanks again so much.
There definitely should be. Thank you, John.
All right, folks.